Cool. So good faith policy, please don't do this on, locks that aren't yours / you don't have permission. Probably feel free to do it at home, but if it's not your property, please do not do it. Don't hold us accountable. We will not help you. That said, lock picking. Okay, so there's like many different types of locks from our standard tumbler locks, which I will demonstrate in a bit about how to break into them. Then we've got more of the fancy. I don't want to say advanced because again, the more ways that things are flashy, the easier it is to break into them. Like you've probably all seen like this one up here, where you might think it's secure, except there's no order. You just, as long as you have like the 5 or 4 digits or characters that you need, it'll open. Especially those key boxes when you go on Airbnbs, they just tell you code. Like there's only so many possibilities that it can be, and there's ways to open it without it. But yeah, so we've got different types. We've got our key locks. We've got fingerprint verifications. We've got our RFIDs. We have these funky ones, which we'll talk about in a second. And by a second, I mean now, jokes. So these ones here at the bottom are called bi locks, as in BI, because there are literally 2, like basically sets of keys in one. These are the things you see all around UNSW. They are quote unquote unpickable, but this is a lockpicking tutorial, so anyway. And then we've got these other funky ones, which basically just have all these different types of extra preventatives. And then there's this funky one at the bottom called a snake lock, which is really hard to try to figure out like how to break into it because it snakes around and it moves around. So unless you have really specific tools, good luck, have fun. Cool. Again, just in terms of content, this is not related to the course, but feel free to blog post / take notes, or don't, up to you. Cool. All right, so a bit of history without that for now. So one of the earliest lock designs originates from Egypt, where they have wooden locks without really any sort of configuration. It's basically you just shove this stick inside, and it's got these spokes on the side that just lock in and rotate whatever handle we are. Great and all because it's cheap, but it is made out of wood, so it's probably not a great idea. You can probably just burn down the house and get in, or burn down the door, burn down the lock, whatever. Wood kind of sucks as a building material. You can pretty much do anything to it and it will break. So if you get it wet, you compromise the structural integrity, and they're just not durable, which is great for us, I guess, but not too great for people in Egypt, although Egypt is kind of hot, I guess, so. Don't know if you have bushfires. But yeah, okay, so we're going to be looking at tumbler locks, which is kind of the most common ones. So, getting started, I guess let's just point out what's going on here. So this is the kind of cross-section of what a lock looks like. The main thing you usually see is this bit here, which is called the lock cylinder, and this is the keyway where you put in the key. Inside, there's 2 metallic, usually brass pins, I think, what they're called pins. They're just basically these brass cylinders that line up, and they're supported by these springs just to help them push down. Now this shear line is the pretty important thing. When the pins of varying lengths, as you can see here, these 2 here are much longer than this one up here. When these 2 pins are raised to the right height, since these lighter blue and darker blue pins are separated, when they are in the correct position, there is space for them to actually turn. Otherwise, if they're in the wrong spot, they won't turn. That's a little demonstration. So as you push it in, you can see when it's all good, all these pins line up with this shear line. I'll show you as well on an actual lock as well. So this is how the right key works, and when it's the wrong key, they won't line up like right now, and if you try to turn it, the pins will get in the way. All right, let me find a transparent one so you can see it. I don't know which one the key is though. It's probably this one. It is not this key. All right, let's find the key. Nope. Oh, so many keys. Might as well just pick it. Nope. Oh, there's so many keys. Now we've got to get into that after. Did I? Did I not bring the key? Oh, we'll use a different color one then. When I figure out which lock it's for. Probably should have color coded them, hey. Yeah, they depend. All right, this one works. Cool. Oh, it's out of focus. It feels bad. Okay, click, click, tap. There we go. Wow, it's my hand. Cool. All right, so I don't know how much you can see, but over here, can I bring it up closer? Is it going to be in focus? Sad. Oh, okay. Angle. That kind of is good. All right, so when I take out the key, you can see that the pins, why is there a reflection? There we go. You can see that there are pins here, and they're kind of all in a different, like, well, they're not straight, right? As I put in the key, push, what you should see, just like the demonstration, is that the pins kind of keep changing. And when the right key is inside, you can see all these keys are flush, right? So they're all the same height. And that allows the thing to actually turn, right? So that's kind of the idea for when we do lockpick. What we try to do is to get all of these pins inside aligned to the same height for the tumbler locks at least. When the wrong key is inside, as you would have seen already, the pins do not, they're not straight, and that wouldn't allow me to turn. If you try to turn it, you probably break the key before the lock, and if the key breaks inside, you would have to use like certain tools to pull them out. There's a whole bunch, different things. Basically, they're just a hook inside. These are like, I think, an 8,000th of a millimeter or something, or centimeter, I don't remember, and they just help you to pull the thing out. But we don't care about that. We want to break into locks, not break the lock. Cool. So in terms of when you do lockpicking stuff, the general rule of thumb is don't do it on active locks. In other words, locks that are actually used. I did tell you to try it on your house once. But yeah, try not to do it on things that will actually screw you over if the locks break. Because yeah, if you do it on an active lock or a lock that's in use, you're probably screwed because you can't use that lock anymore. You have to call a locksmith. And then as they fix it, they're just going to stare at you like, why is there a lockpick inside the lock? Yeah, so if the pick breaks, you do have to kind of extract it with these tools. Yeah, okay. So we'll go back to the anatomy first. The premise for how to break into these different, what we call tumbler locks, because they tumble, is the fact that when we manufacture the locks, or when the locks are manufactured, because of engineering tolerances, they're not perfectly aligned. In a best case scenario, the idea is that all the pins should be completely straight with each other, which means that when you turn it, there's no way to tell if there was an issue with the lock. And provided that all of the pins are aligned, then it will turn freely. But if one of the pins isn't right, you won't be able to tell which one. There is this thing called torsion, which is like torque and tension. It's basically a twisting motion, which is kind of what we exploit in lockpicking. Cool. So the idea is that everything should be straight in terms of the pins. But in reality, what happens is the things are slightly offset. This isn't like in the millimeters to nanometers, but even those slight changes actually make an effect. And so the idea is that when we turn the lock, do I have it? I do. When we turn the lock, is this the right one? It is. When you turn the lock, one of those pins is in the way of letting you turn it, and that one will have the most amount of resistance. I don't know how to describe it. I should have thought of an example. But the idea is you try to find the one that's stopping the lock from turning because of that manufacturing issue where one of the pins is too much to the side, and that one that's too much in the side is going to be the first one to give you the resistance. And you want to systematically try to just push the next pin that's in the way into the shear line so that the pins, I guess, are in the right spot. And once you get all of those, then you do get access to the key or the door, whatever it is. So there's different ways that we can get into a lock. The main things we do need is a lockpick for general case. So there's a whole bunch. Whoop. For different, focus please, sad face. I'm gonna go manual focus. There we go. Bam. So there's a whole bunch of different stuff that you can use. Each has their own, I guess, purpose depending on what type of lock it is. So the main ones we will use are these ones here, which kind of just has a little hook at the end. There's these funky ones called rakes, which is a low skill thing where you basically just shove it in the lock and you just keep going in and out until it opens. Pretty cool. And the other important thing we do need is a torque wrench, right? So when you put in a key into a lock, you're doing two things. One of the things is getting the right key first. One of the things is getting these pins aligned inside. And the other thing is the turning motion, right? So even if we are able to manipulate all of these pins to get them relatively aligned, if you don't have a twisting, turning motion, the lock won't open for most of these tumbler locks. So you need both of the things. And these torque wrenches are basically just little pieces of metal that are thin inside, that are small enough to fit inside of the keyhole. So that goes there, and you just put that inside there. And then depending on which way the lock opens, usually it's clockwise. You'd want to apply a clockwise motion pushing action thingy, whatever you want to call it. Cool. Now the other ones I talked about is a rake. We'll go into these ones in a bit. Now let's just quickly talk about destructive methods. You could just, if you need to get into something, you can just break the shackle. So the shackle is just that top bit up here. Break the keyhole, so you could just get a drill and drill through there, which would break all the pins. That is a very destructive method, but that's generally how locksmiths will get into something if they can't pick it, / it's pick proof. Or you can try to use chemicals to break into it. So there are certain chemicals that weaken the integrity of metals, and you'd be able to just kind of crumble it apart. Or if you think about like laptop locks, some of your laptops have like this little rectangle that's called a Kensington lock. There's other ones called Noble locks as well. They're not very particularly strong, so if you just tug it like with enough force or twist it, it'll probably break off, and that allows you to steal whatever. But we're focusing more on the locks. Cool. So the idea again, just looking at back in this diagram, is you want to put in the wrench first, and then you also want to put in the lockpick, and then push it in, and you'll probably not be able to fill anything until you try it for a while. And the idea is you want to lift each of the pins whilst constantly applying a pressure with the wrench. So one of the other tips before I start is don't put the pick in too far, because the lock is only like that big and your pick is like really long. So if you put it all the way in, you're not going to be able to do much with it. So generally what I like to do with at least these practice locks is figure out how far you need to go to actually go into the lock, and then like put your thumb there or something, so you know this is the max distance that I ever need to pick. Can I get close up? Probably. Tap and tap and tap. There we go. Oh, it's slow. Well, my hands are big. Cool. All right. So you see this one at the very end. Oh, it's the wrong direction. It's all the way high, whilst all the ones here have been dropped down. There's a reflection. Unfortunate. Ignore this last one. This last one is just to stop the shackle or the keyway from continually turning. It's basically not actually part of the lock. It's just a limiter to stop it from turning. So what I'm going to do is distribute some stuff first so you can try it instead of watching me. I've got some baby ones as well. Whoopsies. There we go. All right, give you guys one or more. Oops. 2. Give you guys one of these. I have to open this up. That's all good. You can have the baby ones. Let me open that up first for you.
I reckon the real way to make
Richard loves it when classes do things like that.
Yeah.
Because he definitely doesn't get the job.
I like his story when he's like, as soon as he like the alligator, go.
Me too.
Don't like throwing the paper aeroplane. There's no way that story's good.
Dude. Actually, this one. Dude. And there you go. Yeah, so I don't have enough for each one of you at the same time, but sharing is a thing, so we'll do that. Cool. I just did one. Okay, did I have enough for myself? I didn't think that through. Yes, I do. Okay. All good. All right, so let's quickly go back to that thing before. So basically what you want to do is put the wrench inside of the very bottom of the keyhole. So a usual lock will go in like that, right? So key goes in there, jokes into there, facing there. So what you want to do, probably in a clockwise direction. So you'd want to put the wrench at the bottom here and give it a rotational motion. I can't do it without doing it myself. Yeah, so in this way it'd be going in a clockwise direction. And I usually like using my thumb or something just to constantly press it. Whilst I'm doing that, what you want to do is to put in the lock from the side and try to lift up the pin. So I'm not going to put in the wrench for now. And what you can see is as I move the, pick, I'm trying to like figure out this is the first pin, I'll move it a bit further, second pin, third one, fourth one, fifth one, and sixth one. So as you apply that sort of tension and the turning motion, you should be able to feel that one of the pins is really like hard to push. That's the one which you need to give effort to pop it up because that's the one that's currently blocking it. Make sure to always apply that pressure onto the lock. Otherwise, if you're just lifting up the pins, they're not going to hold. The reasons why the reasons why the pin stays in place is because as long as you're applying the pressure onto the, the keyhole, that friction will stop the pins from falling back down. Whilst you guys try that, I'll show you the other thing. So the other thing is called a rake. And this is when you can't be bothered to actually pick the lock and you just want to get in as fast as possible. The point of this is it lifts up pretty much all of the pins at the same time and you just like shove it in and you keep going forwards and backwards. I don't know if I can show it. Yeah, so basically what the rake does is it can lift up all of the pins at the same time. I can't really do it on camera, it's a bit hard, but the idea is you just shove it in. Nice. You just shove it in and then you just keep doing this until it opens up. And it should open up like eventually, provided it works. There we go. Cool. Do you want to try this one? Okay, I'll just take that out for you. Yep, so do you understand how to do it, or you want to try it first?
I did my first lock.
Yeah, so we want to put the thing all the way at the very bottom bit here. Otherwise it'll get in the way when you try to actually turn it. Yeah. And so yeah, you just want to put a bit of pressure and then try to lift up the pins. Yeah. One recommendation is don't put too much pressure because if you put too much pressure you won't be able to actually push it up. So it's a balance of figuring out how much force do I need to apply without not applying enough, otherwise the pins will fall, and without applying too much that I can't push up the pins. Because basically that friction that's holding the pins up to stay in place is the same friction that you're applying. So you've got to balance how much you're doing.
Can I try the rake?
The rake?
Let's see what's like.
Whilst you do that, so the other alternative to using a rake is called a pick gun. It is this fancy dude here, which if I put in the attachment, pretty much it will lift up, like, it'll give it a force to jolt all the pins up. This is similar to what you might see as what we call a bump key. A bump key has all of the different serrations of the keys at the same height. And the idea is that if you give it a little hammer touch, you transfer all of that heating motion into a kinetic energy, which will push up the pins. This guy's kind of fun, so you can try this. Nice. Feels bad.
Oh no, I hit the rake.
The first one.
Oh yeah, this is smaller. I heard it.
We business? Hell yeah.
Hey, nice. Here's another rake if you want to try the rake.
Try the rake.
Is it working?
Shouldn't.
Which one are you trying to push?
The third one. So the second one's working.
This
now,
one?
But
Oh.
Wait, which one is it now?
Yeah, make sure you know where like the end of the tip is.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm not sure if it's, yeah.
The fourth one's already up there, right?
I don't really get, you know the diagram that kind of made it look like it stays once it pushes it?
Yeah. So the reason why it stays is when you're turning
it's
it,
staying
you
like
have to. So if you let. Oh, did you?
Did it break?
Oh, did you break it? Oh, it just reset. That's fine. That's fine. I suppose. So the reason why the pins stay is because of you turn it, right? So if I lift up the pins, right? Let me see if I can do this right. Oops, let me get it up there first. If I lift up the pins, right, and I let go, they're going to drop back down. But when I use this,
You're turning the circle.
exactly. So if I push it up and then I hold it, right, they're all there until I let go.
Right, okay.
So sometimes if you see, because these are practice ones as well, if you see that, you know, those lines are the things you're trying to align to get all in a perfect thing around this height here. Mm-hmm. If you ever see it above, it means that you've gone too far, and because you're holding onto it, it will never go back down. So in those cases, you either have to start again by just letting go, or if you're skilled enough, you slightly release the pressure just to see the pins slightly come down.
On their own?
They don't drop on them because you're forcing them to stay like tight, exactly. So yeah, so if you slightly reduce the pressure, you can get some of them to drop down. Like this one didn't drop all the way down, but it has reduced the height. If I fully drop it, then it go all the way down. Yeah, I might find the key for this one so you can also try. Okay. Bam. Okay. Now you can both try.
Do you think they need it?
For.
There are 3 of them, so you want to give it to them?
I mean, they could just go around. Maybe I'll get one of the bigger ones because yeah, the small one's a bit harder because it's like, how do I touch it? Do you wanna try the small one? I'll give you over them one of the bigger ones.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Cool. This one might be a bit easier. How you guys going?
I'm not sure.
Are you applying enough?
I'm not sure if I'm applying enough pressure.
I'm not. So what I like to do usually is probably hold it rather than put it on the table. Because on the table you probably don't have enough rotation force. So I'm just pull it out first. Yeah. So I like usually putting my finger through the thing and then just all the way at the bottom. And then you kind of just want to, actually sorry, I'll do it this way. Like that. And then you can put in the things. So basically, if you see the pins, you should be able to see that there's like a line across, right?
Yeah.
So inside of the lock, there's a spring, there's a pin, and there's another pin. And what we want to do is to get all of these pins to pretty much, or all of these lines, to be aligned towards around here. And that's the idea. So the idea is, as you put in the wrench and rotate it, the wrench is the thing that's stopping the pins from falling back down, right? If I pull this all up and then I let go, then all the pins come back down. But if I try to give a rotational force
They just stay there.
and a really heavy one, they're going to stay in place. I don't know if I'm doing it the right way. This way.
What
Wait.
if you like? So I think we were having the issue where we pushed it too high. The two cylinders appeared out, and then but they remained in place. Do we just release tension? Or?
Exactly. So if they're too high, it's not going to fall down because you're applying that friction force. So at that case, you either need to reset just by starting again, or you release your rotational force so that they drop down a bit.
Okay.
And yeah, it's by feel. So basically, as you rotate it, you do want to feel like what you want to do is be a bit systematic with which one feels the hardest to turn.
Was 4.
I don't think that works. So it's by feel. You can feel like one of them is giving you resistance. For example,
I feel like it's the last one.
Yeah, it's like
yes, I think it's this one here,
Yeah.
that one there.
number 5.
So as I feel, these ones are very easy, but as I move up, like it's not moving up until I move it, and you hear that click,
Yeah. Okay.
right? That's kind of a tell. And then you kind of want to start again and going, okay, what's the next hardest one? It's going to be the one at the back, right? And then the next one is the second one, something like that, and then probably the first one as well.
You're pressing low. Yeah. Is that a lot of pressure on that one? You're just
It's
like,
not that much pressure. I'm just going to do this. There you go, like that, right? It's kind of by feel, because I've been doing this for a while, right? That you know how much to push down.
Okay.
And yeah, like I am putting it pretty much, like you can see, I guess, like part of my fingertips white, but it's not like super, because if you do a lot of pressure, you won't, it's unlikely this will break, but the bigger issue is that you won't actually be able to pick it up because you're putting so much force. Remember, torque, well, in engineering, torque is much stronger than just a single lever force, right? So if I'm doing this, it's going to be very hard for me just to do this motion as opposed to my, 2 fingers pushing. So you need to figure out how much do I need to apply, not to let the pins fall down, but also enough for the pins to stay in place. That's kind of the balancing thing. You did it! Nice.
It's so rewarding.
It is. You hear that click, it's like,
Yeah, I literally freaked out because this fell and I was like, stop. No.
yeah.
Get to the last pin in this.
Which one?
This one.
The very, very last one isn't a pin, if that.
No, I can't get to that one. Oh, one's back in.
Oh. How are you going? You get that one?
Yeah, I got the
Did?
one, but
Nice.
this one.
Yeah.
To the left.
Oh. Yeah. The different pins are of varying difficulties. Maybe you can switch it with another table if you want. But I'm going to talk about the last point, which I didn't actually bring. The last thing is called a shim. Whoops, that was a pause button. So what a shim is, basically if we look inside the lock, maybe I should have used the bigger one. Can I borrow the big one? Thank you. Inside of the lock, the assembly of the lock contains this thing here called the locking bar. And the locking bar is the actual thing that stops this shackle from being able to come out. So what a shim is, it's a little piece of like aluminium. You can just get it from like a Coke can, cut it, and then curl it. And what you do is you wedge it between the openings of the shackle here. And what you try to do is to displace this spring here, because this is a spring so it can move. So by forcing something in, which I didn't bring though, hypothetically you can push this locking bit out of the way, which allows you to pull up the shackle. So this stops you from actually having to pick the lock. There's a bunch of other stuff as well, depending on the lock. I'll quickly show some rotary locks as well. But yeah, so lockpicking isn't the only way to get into a lock, because again, the more avenues you have for security or for design, the more ways there are actually to get into a lock, which is like ironic. Cool. Shims, chemical corrosions, stuff like that, blah, blah, Yeah, so I talked about rakes, which is basically you just shove it in, you keep moving it, and it will open eventually. A bump key is basically a rake, just you put your own pressure by hitting it with a mallet or a hammer. Pick guns, which are these guys, is pretty much the same, except it's like a spring lever force instead of you hitting something. And a shim. So shims work provided that the locks have that sort of spring. Nice. If they don't have spring, so how we defend against these sort of things, because of course I can't just tell you how to break into a lock without saying how to defend against a lock. So having better fundamental designs. So the thing with the shims, with that locking bar at the top, which is the dude over, none of these have it, jokes, is that they're spring loaded, which means that if I can force the spring back, then it's no longer locking the design of the lock. Some of the newer ones, for example, the master locks, which aren't exactly that safe, use ball bearings instead, and they physically can't move because there's no spring. To prevent someone from drilling into the core of a lock, what we might do is get some hardened steel, which is really hard to, I think it's called mill steel. It's really hard to actually drill into it, so you'd probably wear out your drill bit per lock, and drill bits can get pretty expensive, especially the diamond tipped ones, which is like $70 for essentially what drills a hole in things. False gates, which is an idea inside the lock core. Instead of having just one way to actually make the lock appear to be open, manufacturers drill in extra little holes which your locks can actually get, which the metal cylinders, which the bits will fall into. And if they do fall into that because you're trying to pick it and you don't have the exact correct combination, they'll fall into the spot and then they'll get stuck, which will stop you from being able to open it. Hopefully, as you've seen from sort of the smaller padlock, they're a bit harder to an extent because, to some, there's one, did I bring it? So it's kind of like security by obscurity, but the smaller the lock, sometimes the harder it is to get inside because this lock here, the keyhole is so small that you can't even put in both your torque wrench and the pick. You can try it if you want. And so in order to actually open it, you need to get specific tools / you need to get non-standard tools. Because I can buy this off eBay for like $20. That's exactly where I got it from. Whereas the other kit that I have is like $90 because it has these really tiny ones. So the more tools you need, the harder it is for a standard person to get into because they need to buy that tools themselves. Putting more pins inside of the lock is a wishy-washy one. It is kind of useful because you'd have to spend more time to manipulate all of the pins. And like you've seen with the bilock, which was that second one, second row, if you have multiple rows of pins, you'd actually have to have multiple tension wrenches to make sure that the locks actually stay in place. So that does provide security benefits because then you have to manipulate 2 separate rows or 3 separate rows, or this weird combination of like whatever's going on in that one there. Cool. And the next thing is spool pins, which will be the last defense thing, is these taper things. So the fundamental design in how the locks turn is that we're able to push this pin all the way up so it fits. But by putting these tapers, if you don't perfectly get them to the set in the right height, they'll lock up by getting this corner here, getting stuck there. Now the pins are made out of brass, so you can't just turn it and break the pin or anything. So this is quite a useful way to get around that. Now the way to attack these spool pins is you release a bit of the tension so it drops back down and then you hit it up really strong. So it raises itself all the way up to here first before you actually do the turning. But that does take skill. So a lot of the mitigations stop people from just doing low skill attacks, from just shoving something in, turning it again, and you require much better skill at doing those things. Now, quick side notes, because we're running out of time, is sometimes you don't always want to pick something. You might want to figure out what is the actual combination of the lock, so you can make a replacement key or something like that. So you can buy these things called pick decoders. And basically what they do is you push it into the lock, you don't have the right size, and you have this thing here which can lift up individual pins. oops, let's open it up. And there's a guide to say, you know, this is height 1, height 2, height 3, sorry, pin 1, pin 2, pin 3, height 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And these things are pretty useful if you, finally get into a lock and you want to go, okay, I need to recreate a key as a locksmith or something so the tenant can get back in since they lost the key. These things are like $70, I think. I've got a few of them. I don't know why, they were interesting, so I bought it. And I think that was the last thing for that. Another thing just to quickly touch on is tumbler pins. Tumbler locks aren't the only types of locks. There's different things like these rotary locks. These have their own issues because, yeah, they pretty much suck. What you do, this is a master lock which I bought from like Big W for like $5 or something. Basically what you do is you hold onto one of the things and you just try to pull it apart. And when you try to pull it apart, what happens is that the actual things that lock and hold the lock into place, they get pulled, which means that they're encountering resistance. And when they encounter resistance, you can feel for when that lock is sort of set. I can't do it because I am under pressure, but if I was given enough time, I think I know, or whatever it was.
High school, we had lockers, and everyone had these, and you would literally just pull and just flick all three at once.
Yeah, until they fit.
It would just go.
Yeah, so with these ones, you basically just turn until you feel like a slight little change in the lock. I don't have any tape, but if I showed you, as I turn this pin, this lock actually slightly moved in or slightly moved out. And when they move out, it means that you've kind of bypassed this one here. And then since there's only 2 knobs, you could just do trial and error and then just keep turning them until they open. I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to expose myself. And then there's like these ones here, which are even worse, which that's already open. But basically, you just keep pulling it. There's like a pull tab here, and you just rotate it until it physically can't move. And because it physically can't move, that's when you know it's opened. And these ones kind of suck. So in terms of like, I guess as a wrap up, actually before I do that, there's also these fun ones like this, where instead of the keyway being, vertically up, it's actually to the side. So this keyhole is horizontal, although the pins are vertical. So this one is harder to actually put a lock in and turn it. These are pretty cool, but not that useful. And the keys look like this, as opposed to the standard ones, which have the serrations on the sides. This one is actually, I think you can kind of see the raised bumps there. Cool, yeah. I'm going to ignore the decoding bit. These locks are easy to bypass with other methods as well. You can decode them by filling and rotating the locks, or you can bypass it by pushing the levers. So these locks, they stay locked because there's a lever mechanism that when these things open, you can actually push it down. But we won't go into that for now.
You just like lift the lockpick and just like flip the thing.
Yeah, you go in and you push it down. Yeah. And yeah, so just to finally wrap up, we might just look at this because this will be part of, I think, today's lecture or something. We'll look at this next week though, just in terms of other ways to get into locks and stuff. But yeah, so hopefully that was an interesting thing. I might leave them here because I don't really want to bring it home because Siebes. So next week, if you want to try again, feel free to. Otherwise, thanks for coming. Sorry, ran a bit late. Yeah, next week there'll be another case study. Please do the pre-readings. Come to today's lecture if you can. If you have any questions, hit me up, email, Slack, whatever. Next week's lectures will be on Zoom, both Monday and Tuesday. Today's one is in. Did he? Damn it, I gotta be here though. Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, you're the stream guy, aren't you?
Yeah.
Could we theoretically copy?
I have not read any announcements up to this point.
Just more said like don't pump it
Thank
into
you.
the rain. Like don't put that for.
Right. Cool. Yeah, but thanks guys. We'll see you guys next week / whenever.
A little bit of rain never hurt anybody. Like my pants are always dry now. Yeah.